Welcome, everybody. First order of business is we're going to ask Vice President Trustee George Moore to give us an invocation.
Let's pray. Father, we just come to you today to say thank you for your blessings that you have given us. And Father, we ask that you just continue to put your hand upon our county and upon each elected official, upon our city and their elected officials. Just continue to guide Mayor Turner. And Father, we ask that you oversee this proceeding today. Help us to be wise in the choices that we make. And Father, help it to be beneficial to the people here in Harris County. And we ask that you just continue to bless those that are working here at the Department of Education. Just keep them safe. Help them to be very productive in order that they might not only just bless the people that are under their care, but they might bless this community. And we ask these things in your Son's name, Jesus. Amen. Amen.
Okay, we're going to call this meeting to order. It is 4:02. And I'm just going to go ahead and read my normal script here.
We're going to have the pledge, too.
Oh, we're going to do the pledge?
Yes.
Okay. Do the pledge? Sure. Okay. Trustee Cantu.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Harris County Education now convened in a special board meeting on the Monday, February 11th, 2019, in the boardroom at 6300 Irvington Boulevard, Houston, Texas, at 4:02 p.m. Pursuant to BED local, the public may speak at regularly scheduled meetings. This is a specially called meeting. I wish to extend a warm welcome to everyone present at this meeting of the Board of Trustees. As trustees, we are here to set goals, listen to reports from the superintendent, approve budgets, contracts, personal appointments, and make policy for the district. It is not the role of the board to make day-to-day operational decisions. The management and day-to-day operation of the department are the responsibility of the superintendent. We have policies and procedures in place to resolve concerns and issues. This is a public meeting of the Board of Trustees, not a meeting of the public. Prior to this meeting, the board received information related to items on today's agenda. Agenda items will not necessarily be handled in the order listed on the notice. The meeting is open to all who wish to attend and hear the matters discussed. During the course of this meeting, the board may determine that a closed session is necessary. In that event, the board will meet in a closed session in consideration of matters duly posted of this meeting as pertained by Section 551.071 and 551.084, inclusive of the Texas Government Code. And respectfully ask that you now turn off your cell phones or move them to silent mode. Thank you for taking time this afternoon to join us for this, for your interest in the Harris County Department of Education. Okay, we're going to come to order. So, first thing on the agenda is consideration and possibility vote election to appoint and or replace directors of the Harris County Department of Education, Public Facilities Corporation. Do I have a motion? Any nominees?
Make the motion to replace Lewis Evans with Josh Flynn.
You heard the motion?
I second that.
Thank you. Any other nominations?
You can take them one at a time, or
Okay.
it's up to you.
Hearing none, we'll go to the vote. All those in favor of Josh Flynn?
I'd like to discuss. I thought we were able to discuss. Don't we get to discuss, or is this too secret of a meeting to have a discussion? I mean, we aren't letting the people talk. At least we should be able to discuss, or should we not be able to discuss? Let me know. Do we get a discussion or not?
Go right ahead.
Okay, first thing, I want to apologize, everybody here. I want to apologize to all the staff. I want to apologize to all the people here, because apparently somebody thought it was such an emergency that they had to call this meeting at the end of the week on, Friday at 4 p.m. All of a sudden, there was such a big emergency, we had to call a meeting for Monday. Such a crazy big emergency. I want to apologize to everybody here that had to work over the weekend to get this thing together. It's absolutely nonsense that we're here on this short notice. I have a lot of problems with this hearing, with this meeting. One, I suspect that there's a walking quorum, and I beg the Harris County attorney to look into this. I beg him to, because there's obviously something going on. How did they know to have a hearing that everyone was going to be here at the end of Friday? And then there's also an email that was sent from the board president saying that there was nothing necessary to even have a meeting over. That was on a couple of days ago. But all of a sudden, miraculously, we need to have this emergency meeting. And then one of the items is included, appointing an attorney. And that's the result of this president being mad because he couldn't have some emergency meeting as a result of, because there was a hurricane, because it wasn't a hurricane, because he had to have 72 hours notice. So now he wants to get rid of the attorney. We already had that vote last meeting, but apparently y'all's lives aren't important enough. Apparently the other trustees' lives aren't important enough. Apparently certain people just want to have their way no matter what. And I beg the county attorney to have investigation. I beg them to. I beg the county commissioners to look into this and to do something about it. I beg the county judge to do something about it. This is outrageous, this is unacceptable, and we shouldn't be doing this.
Okay. All in favor of Josh Flynn for the PFC board? Raise your right hand. Are you understand what we're doing?
I'm not through discussing.
Okay.
Before we
Okay, there's
vote.
more discussion. Never mind.
Oh, excuse me. Is it on? Mr. Dick, would you be in favor of delaying this meeting?
Why do we? No, we shouldn't have the meeting at all. We should have, if we're going to discuss this stuff, we should be doing it at our normal meeting. There's no reason for it.
Okay, calm down. I'm asking you.
Well, you made me come here.
I didn't make you come here.
Well, I got my dick. My
Got an email?
constituents
I tell you
want me to
what,
come here.
guys, listen.
I
Y'all
got
can
it.
direct your comments towards me, okay? And if you're going to
Yeah.
ask a question, please ask me, and I will ask the question. Thank you.
Well, I sort of agree with you that we could do this in a regular business meeting. I don't think there's any more items. I don't know if there's any more items that the Public Facility Corporation has to, will be meeting. But I do think we do need if we've got people that are on there that need to be replaced, we probably need to replace those. But in our next scheduled business, our next scheduled meeting is when? Month. So that's roughly 2 weeks.
I'd like to comment, please. The reason for this meeting is that we have a PC corporation that's not legally constituted at this point in time because we're having used holdover members and a president from 3 presidents before to vote. And there is business going on at the PFC continuously. We're building a new school. Plus, we need to have this meeting to get new directors on the board so the board could act properly. And that's the reason for this meeting. I don't think it needs to be postponed. Actually, the PFC probably will need to be meeting before the end of February to address other problems that the PFC has. So I'm not in favor of tabling this or this particular agenda item.
Anybody else would like to talk?
Yes, normally when we come to the meetings, well, I've only been to one regular board meeting, but we usually have a big board book with a bunch of backup material that explains agenda items. I just have one piece of paper here in front of me, and so I'd like to know more details about the PFC. You're asking us to appoint a board member to a vacancy, but I want to know how many positions are there? Are there other vacancies? Mm-hmm. Is there another opportunity for another board member to be nominated? I'd like to serve.
Yeah.
So I don't know if our attorney can enlighten us.
I mean, can I answer this? Because you received a memorandum from our board attorney explaining all of these problems. You also have gotten emails from the department telling you who the 6 people are and who, in effect, really needs to be replaced. So I really don't understand why you don't know this.
Trustee Summers, please direct your comments to me. Let me answer your question. Last Friday, we had a PFC meeting, and it was constituted within 72 hours. After the meeting was posted and ready, then 2 hours after that, we all got who is on the PFC 2 hours after. Prior to that, we had the understanding that a certain group of people were in there, and then after that, it changed because of some legal problems. What we need to do so that we don't have we could not respond to the 72 hours based on the legal counsel. We could not respond. They posted the meeting 72 hours, and my first response was, what does the Board of Trustees have to do with all this? Aren't we supposed to be part of this? And I did everything I could to represent y'all by asking for a emergency meeting first so that we can fill the positions. But we were told, and Mr. Dick made it very eloquently, spoke as to what a problem that was, but there was no other remedy to fix the vacancies, and we had holdover people that they were bringing back from years past, which basically negated everything that happened since his last meeting, and that's a problem. And I wanted to fix that problem before the next meeting, but I couldn't do that, and so the next course of action was to try and set a meeting right after so that we can fix it then. But the courts were closed, so we couldn't do that. So this is the first meeting after that meeting that I could post a remedy so that there wouldn't be another 72-hour meeting that we could not respond to. So we have to do this today in the event that there is a 72-hour meeting that we can't respond to because we can't use emergency, we can't do any of that. Does that make sense?
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to amend the item to include Richard as replacing Les Hooper.
Well, okay, we're not there yet. We still have, my name's still on the floor right now, so,
I was talking about doing them together.
okay.
Before we go any further, and I think the issue is, we remember at the last meeting, it was discussed that, I think, the last meeting, from what I remember about PFC, we were saying that, I think you guys were looking for more information, because I know that the board is part of that board. So I think there was supposed to be more information given about PFC, because I know there was going to be some changes.
Yes, sir.
So far as the rest of the board is concerned, like those of us who didn't make the PFC meeting, those of us who were not on that committee, we just knew that there was going to be a PFC meeting at some point, and then we would assumably be updated before the next board meeting. So I suppose before we start voting, I guess we've kind of jumped right into the voting of who to what, but I think it would be preferential for especially for those of us who are new on the board to find out which positions are open and a refresher basically, because we were briefly told what PFC was last meeting, and then that there are some positions that are going to need to be changed. So can we get a brief update? I know I think Lewis Evans is still on that board.
No.
And there's some other people that
Right.
we understand that, but the
Yeah.
point is, as we're going to voting, we're voting, and a couple of us are still.
Lewis Evans is a holdover member,
Uh-huh.
and then the only 2 members that have been placed on the board that have been official, based on our attorney's opinion, is trustee Sumners and trustee Wolf.
Okay.
And all four of the other ones are, in essence, vacant. They're holdovers. So we need to codify those if we want to codify those, or if we want to move somebody off, we can move those people off. If, you know, I don't have to be on this board, okay? It's just the first name that came up, and then the attorney said we can take one at a time. So I am just trying to accommodate the board, not trying to throw any bombs, not trying to railroad anything. I want everybody to see that this is a regular meeting. Did you want to speak?
Yes, sir.
Superintendent wants to speak.
Thank you, Chair. Really, how we've gotten to this point is there was a clause in the bylaws for our PFC that we needed to renew some positions, and we weren't aware of that until I believe Trustee Sumners had requested additional information for how members were selected and how those seats are filled. Once we found that we had several people, including myself, who were in holdover position, which is, I'd like to make a correction to what Mr. Sumner said. We are in compliance currently with the PFC because these positions have been in holdover, which is legal. We still need to bring that up to speed and get current members on there. It should reflect members who are currently sitting on this board, in my opinion. I think, in my opinion, we should have the president of the board that sits on the PFC. But we are not currently out of compliance. We just need to refresh the membership of the people who are on there and get current.
Because PFC, anybody can serve on PFC, correct?
Pretty much,
But typically we have board members and administration.
Yes, sir. Okay. However, I will say this. I'm not sure where the sense of urgency is coming from. I think there was mention that it was necessary to get this done today. There's possible PFC meetings that could happen in the next week or so. I'm not aware of what PFC meeting is supposed to happen in a week or so and why. I'm not aware of it. And so I don't know about that. And then I'm confused with the statements that were said a few minutes ago about the purpose for doing this. It kind of contradicts item number 3, which is to go back and address the items that were voted on last Friday at the PFC. That's not consistent with why those are on there. So I'm confused by that. So.
And we can discuss those items after. Right now, I don't know if there's going to be another meeting. I had a discussion with our superintendent 2 days before the meeting was called. I had no idea that they were going to call a meeting immediately, and we had a discussion, and there was nothing there. And so we can have a discussion now as well, but that doesn't mean that in 2 days another meeting can be called and using the same people to do the same thing. And as far as constituting it, we need our input as trustees, a board of trustees. We are the elected officials that are supposed to manage this $110 million project, okay? Mr. Dick.
He said he needs our input, but I think that's a joke. I think they already figured out how they're going to vote. They did that before, and now they're just, why don't you just write down what you're going to decide? Why even have the meeting? You guys already figured out what you're going to do. This is an absolute joke. You said, in your opening, you said that we received documents before the meeting. We didn't receive nothing. All we received at the last minute on a Friday evening is 2 pages saying the stuff that we're going to vote on. There's nothing emergency about it. Nothing. Zero, nothing emergency about it. This is just a joke. This is an embarrassment, and we should not be having this meeting. I beg again, the county attorney needs to investigate this walking quorum problem. And so and I believe the county commissioners and the county judge need to look into this. This is absolutely unacceptable.
Did that answer did you have any additional questions? Okay,
So-
so why don't we?
Well, no, I'm not ready to vote here. And I certainly understand, because I'm not familiar with how many positions are available. How many are? After reading the stuff, I got it right after when it was sent out.
There are 4 positions that need to be voted on today.
Okay.
They're available.
They don't have to be voted on. They're
That is true.
available. Okay, so has Mr. Evans resigned?
Not to my knowledge. Mr. Colbert, have you received, or I asked Dr. Amesqua, he's not here, but.
No, I haven't. None of the current members have resigned. You know, they're holdover positions, and that's why they eventually need to be refreshed.
So what is our legal right to, can we remove them at any time?
So in terms of, there's a difference between removal versus vacancies.
Yeah.
So for some of these positions, the terms have expired. So Les
Okay.
Hooper, for example, who continues to hold over, his term expired some time ago. Dr. Amesqua's term has expired. Mr. Colbert and Mr. Evans's terms just expired in December 2018. So they've been holdover since December 15th, 2018. And so those 4 positions, because the terms have expired, those are vacant positions, and according to the bylaws of the PFC, the county school trustees, i.e. you all, are charged with filling those vacancies. Removal is a different provision under the bylaws, and
So those are vacant, is what I'm understanding,
because the
basically.
terms have expired,
Oh,
yes.
okay.
But they still lawfully, pursuant to
All
the
right.
Public Facilities Corporation Act, hold those positions.
Okay. So, what would be a, I'm just trying to understand here and be fair to make sure that we get the right people on this board if we're gonna fill it. And, you know, I don't wanna just go in here and vote on people that we haven't looked at why we're voting on them or what their qualifications are for this. Now, I'm in total agreement that, you know, people on this board are to be on there. I think that's, and I'm follow the superintendent's lead on that. And so, I think that, you know, I'm not against that. Now, the rest of all of this, I'm not really for wanting to discuss that today. If we need board members on there because they're gonna be making decisions and building this, I'm okay with that. And the rest of it, I kinda agree with Dick. It's not an urgency to get that done.
Let's
Okay.
keep the conversation germane to the agenda item in
Yeah,
question.
okay. I appreciate that. But I want to make sure that we get people that do have the time, are willing to serve, and that we do a good job with it.
Trustee Dick.
Are you too coward to let these people speak? Why don't you let them speak? All these people, they took the time to come here at this short emergency meeting. Why don't you let them speak, or are you too coward to do it?
It's not on the agenda. This is a specially called meeting, not a regularly called meeting. Y'all may speak at the next regularly called meeting, which was announced just moments ago.
So he's too coward.
Is there any further discussion with regards to agenda item number 2?
Wait a minute, okay.
Wait.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
I hate to do this in public, but for all you trustees that say haven't been informed, you haven't been reading your emails or anything else.
Okay.
And and forget it, Josh.
That's not germane to the.
Yes, it
to the
is too,
point.
because they're not wanting to vote because they don't know about it, and they should know about it. If they had read what is sent to them, they would know about it.
Thank you. Okay. Trustee Dick.
I don't want to vote because this is a sham meeting. We have no business wasting taxpayer money for this bogus non-emergency meeting. That's why I don't want to vote, because this is a joke. And I beg the county attorney to investigate this obvious walking quorum.
So, is there any PFC meetings that are planned between now and the next board meeting?
There were no PFC meetings planned between our last board meeting and the next, but there was one held where we could not respond as a elected board of trustees.
Okay.
Meeting, I mean, them not to have a board meeting until we get this filled?
That's not on the agenda. We did not put that on the
Okay.
agenda, so we would not be able to just consider that.
It's not relevant to the discussion.
Okay, can I give just one short comment here? The PFC doesn't have to have a meeting to take action. They are always taking action. We're building a new school. They're discussing problems with the school or about the school and the construction of the school continuously. It's not a once a month or once every 6 weeks situation. There's activity going on continuously here that's being directed by the PFC because they're responsible for building the new school because they are the entity that sold the bonds and is building the school, not HCDE. So it's not a matter of having a meeting. It's a matter of that we presently have a president of the PFC that hasn't worked for the department for, 2 years or 3 years, and we have a president that has been acting as president that has not been legally approved by the board.
Superintendent Colbert.
Yeah, first of all, I don't know of any PFC meeting that we plan on having before the next board meeting. And historically, the PFC has never gotten the permission of this board to hold a meeting. So I just wanted to clarify that.
So I'm looking at the email, and I, now that I'm actually familiar, now that I know what the terms are expiring means, and I can look and see which ones are the holdovers. The question becomes, obviously we need to change the PFC board. We want to update the board. I guess the question becomes, what is the urgency of doing this specific vote tonight, I guess?
In the event that another meeting is held with a 72-hour notice, we as a board of trustees could not affect that meeting by our input.
Because you're not on the board?
Because we have 2 members on the board and the rest are holdovers.
Okay. So the bottom line is you want to have a meeting but are not able to without being, that's the part that I guess I'm not curious of how the bylaw, I'm looking at the bylaws, but I'm trying to see which, you can't do a meeting for PFC without having current board members. Can we not just say who? That's another issue.
And that is certainly valid. We could just abdicate our responsibility and let it just flow through. My concern, okay, because I can't communicate with everybody except in an open forum, okay? My concern was immediately at 72 hours, I was concerned about what our responsibility is. Mm-hmm. And we were not part of that process at all. We were cut off, and then we had a wall put in front of us saying, you will not do anything. And I asked them to please defer this meeting, and it was not deferred. That can happen again. There is no stopping that unless we fill the holdover positions. Superintendent Colbert.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarification for the board, the reason why we had the PFC meeting last week is we recognize that because we weren't clear on who was members and who wasn't, we needed to ratify some actions that were taken. Mm-hmm. And I felt a sense of urgency to be able to do that immediately because we were out of compliance. We needed to get in compliance with contracts that had already been out. And so it wasn't until Tuesday that we decided to do that, and as soon as that we could have the meeting was on Friday. There was no attempt, and I'm going to repeat this, there was absolutely no attempt to circumvent the board's authority or to not inform the board. I only wanted us to stay in compliance with contracts that had already been issued.
Is there even going to be another PFC meeting? Probably not. I mean, do we know if there's even going to be another PFC meeting? Is there the opportunity? I mean, James Colbert, you think there's going to be another PFC meeting before the next scheduled meeting?
I'm not aware of one. I have no intention to try to call one.
You think, what's the likelihood that there's another PFC meeting before the next scheduled board meeting?
I don't have a need for one right now.
So you'd say slim to none?
At this very moment, that's what I would say.
So slim to none. But still, we got to call this emergency meeting and waste people's money, waste taxpayer dollars. That's really good, and that's being conservative, wasting y'all's money. Thank you.
Okay, please. Okay, is there any more discussion about agenda item number 2?
What's the motion? You might want to
Well, I'm just, what I'm going to do is clearing the slate, okay? As if my name was never mentioned, okay? And I'm going to ask for, we can't do that? Okay,
I
all right.
apologize for interrupting.
Okay,
Well, you
then we
can
have-
only if Mr.
That's fine.
Sumners, who made the motion, and Dr. Moore,
Well,
who
without
seconded,
objection, I guess I
agreed.
could.
That's right. So if they agree to withdraw their motion.
Could I move to make an amendment to the motion?
Sure.
Can-
Well, let's restate the motion first. The motion is that Josh Flynn be placed on the PFC
In the position of Mr. Evans.
in the position of Mr. Evans.
I'd like to replace your name with Richard Cantu's name.
The motion is to replace Josh Flynn's name with Richard Cantu.
I'll second that.
You okay with that?
Okay. All in favor of replacing Josh Flynn with Richard Cantu?
Well,
No, this is a amendment.
Well, and I'm not sure if it's friendly.
All-
yeah,
Mr.
it's, well, as
Sumners.
far as I'm concerned, it's friendly.
Okay.
No, there's no
Mr.
friendly. There's no
Sumners,
friendly
no.
here.
There's, so it's a pure motion to amend the motion.
Yeah. Okay. So the motion is to replace Josh Flynn with Richard Cantu. Any discussion?
For the member position on the board.
Replacing, no, right now, right, but this is the amended motion. Okay, we're voting on the amendment, not the underlying motion.
Correct.
Okay? So, all those in favor of replacing Josh Flynn with Richard Cantu, raise your hand.
Actually, can we discuss?
Okay.
Yeah.
what-
Yes, please.
So,
Let's
okay,
discuss this.
so we can be clear, the positions that are holdovers, Les Hooper, I said it right?
Correct.
He is president currently of the PFC, and you have Lewis Evans, who is a member of the PFC. And then Superintendent Colbert, his term has expired, and Jesus Amasquat, I'm jacking up. I'm sorry. Yes, his term has expired as well. So we're really, ultimately, we're just trying to reconstitute the board. The question becomes, what does it matter which position, who goes where? I guess that's another thing too, because who do we want for PFC president? Does the president have certain terms? I don't know. That's
Yeah, the board will elect their own president. There are
No.
6 positions
he's
and
saying
3.
I think that's right.
hold on.
There are 6 positions,
Uh-huh.
and in those 6 positions, there's 3 different. I'm not sure what the word is, but you have 3 different categories. Okay, basically the categories are simply when they expire. Okay, and so the only 2 that have non-expired terms are Trustee Wolf and Trustee Sumners. All the rest have been expired, and we have to fill them in. So it's basically the length of term, not the position of office. Okay,
There is a president on there is a president.
there
on
is a president.
According to the bylaws, there's a president, a vice president, a secretary, and a treasurer, which are elected by this board,
Okay.
not the PFC board.
Okay,
Um,
are
that's
those
an-
board members? Are those the president, vice president, secretary, and treasurer?
Give me one second. Each officer. I believe so, but give me one second and I'll can find that.
Can I add a comment while she's looking, Chair? Historically, the president of the PFC has been the executive director of facilities and maintenance. And so Mr. Hooper is the former executive director of facilities and maintenance.
Okay.
And they're the person that's in direct contact with the contractors of our facilities and whatever projects we have. So typically, that's what we've done in the past.
Okay.
Can I comment? The problem that I see with Mr. Wolf's motion is that we don't have a position to fill that the president of, the president of this board has typically been on that board. And if we don't have 2 positions under the current operating situation that we've had in the past to fill with board members. We only have one position to fill with a board member. So if Mr. Flynn would not be able to be put on the board if some other board member was put on, unless we do not put the president of the PFC on as a board member, which is possible.
How much longer do you have?
As long as
I'm talking about this, attorney.
It's unclear in the bylaws, so I'm checking the Public Facility Act Corporation just to make
Okay.
sure.
Go ahead, Trustee Dick.
You know, the first meeting, they said they had no problems with, former President Lewis Evans. In fact, we stopped and we had right at the beginning talk about how nice and how wonderful of a person Lewis Evans is. But apparently there's just such an emergency now that Lewis Evans is so bad that they got to kick him off the board and put somebody else. This is a sham meeting, folks. It clear as day is. It's a sham meeting. There's no reason for it. It's a waste of time. I mean, why are we even here? Why don't we just do this at a normal called meeting? Why don't we do it then? Or y'all have a problem with Lewis Evans? Apparently y'all do now. You didn't have a problem for 2 years when he was the board president. Apparently they have a problem with Lewis Evans now.
What we're waiting on is the attorney to give us information as to whether or not the officers are actually directors.
And Section 303.036 of the Public Facility Corporation Act regarding officers states that a director who is a member of the governing body or an officer or employee of the sponsor is eligible to serve as an officer of the corporation. So that would be a director of the PFC or an officer or employee of the sponsor, which is HCDE, is eligible to serve as an officer of the corporation. That's what the statutory guidance says.
Okay. Can you answer my question? And we don't have to go to session. But the president of the PFC does not have to be a director.
I can't tell you with certainty, Mr. Sumners. I can tell you what the statute says. And the bylaws, as I'm going through them right now, just dictates what the officers of the corporation are. I can tell you past practice has been that the officers have been directors of the PFC.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion, okay? But it would require Trustee Wolf to pull his amendment back and Trustee Sumners to pull his amendment back, or his motion back.
Trustee Moore seconded my motion, so I'd like to.
And Trustee Moore.
I pull it back.
Okay. 1,
Okay.
2. Do you still want to leave your original motion? I'd like to put a less controversial motion on the floor, and so that we could answer a bunch of these questions right off. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay, is that suitable
Move
for
my
you?
motion.
Without objection, that's what I would like to do, is just clear the slate, and I'd like to make my own motion.
I'd ask that you table the thing until the next board meeting. That'd be the motion I'd ask. And let these people speak. Are you too coward? Chicken?
Okay.
Chicken.
I would like to make a motion that Richard Vela and Jesus Mvasqua be elected to the PFC board. Is there any objection to that?
You're gonna have to tell what
Richard Vela, who was the previous one, that we will codify him now in the same position that he was before, 2 hours after the meeting was called, the last Friday or Tuesday, whatever day it was. Right. He's the current executive director.
So he'd be the president of the board?
No.
Okay.
That's a different motion. That would be
I'm sorry,
a different-
president of PFC?
He's currently on it. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
And we're just codifying him? No?
Correct.
Sorry to add to the confusion. Not in the bylaws, but historically, the executive director of facilities served on the PFC board.
Okay.
That was as, and also as president of the PFC board. Mr. Hooper was a longtime member of HCDE and served as president of the PFC board. When he retired, the PFC board voted to replace him as a director and president with the new executive director of facilities.
Okay.
The bylaws require that you all do that, and that was not done. And then similarly, when Mr. Villa arrived at HCDE as executive director of facilities, the PFC board voted to appoint him as a director and president, but this board never did. And so I think that's what you are attempting to do now.
Yes.
And just to be clear, so we can make sure the bylaws remain clear and consistent with the classes of
Yes,
directors.
class, that's the word I was
That
looking for, right.
Mr. Villa would replace Mr. Hooper's class in that position.
Class.
And
But not president, but class.
just class,
Correct.
just as a director. And then Dr. Amesqua would continue to serve in a new term in his current class.
Correct.
Okay.
Got a question. So there's still 4 openings, and this is just 2 of them.
This would be 2 of the 4 that are open, correct.
Right.
Okay?
So,
Can you repeat it? You said Mr. Vela as the new,
As a,
codified as the new president. I mean,
but not president, because that's a different, election of officers is not on the agenda today.
Okay.
So it's just to replace that director position.
That leaves,
so we're just codifying the 2 that are already there.
Correct.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Who were attempted to be there. Mr.
After
Villa,
you
who was
appoint
attempted to be
Okay.
there,
And-
and
and
Dr.
let
Amesqua,
me-
who was,
and let
and
me
still
ask-
is legally there.
Okay, so they're already serving right now.
Mr. Villa is not, because
Officially.
because Mr. Hooper continues as a holdover.
Oh, okay.
Dr. Amesqua is
well-
there and legally there.
So I would like to ask our superintendent, are you good with that?
Yes, Trustee Moore, it would be my recommendation as the superintendent of Harris County Department of Ed that 3 members that are critical to be on the PFC
Yeah.
would be Richard Vela, who's our current executive director of facilities and construction, Dr. Amesqua, who is our CFO, and myself. I think it's vital that
And
those
and you're
3 members-
currently on there in codified?
Yeah, but I'm in a holdover position.
Oh,
His
okay.
term expires.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chairman Flynn didn't mention my name in that
That's
motion.
because I have more, there's more discussion to go with that on my side. So I felt like the 2 that would be non-controversial would be the 2 that are already there, that are already doing all the work for that, and we simply codify it. We need to do that so that we don't have holdovers coming over from years past or that were recently retired, and then they have to come back. They get a call just hours before, if that.
President Flynn, did you receive a second to your motion? I just didn't write it down. Have you received a second to your motion?
well, you had asked,
Hasn't been one yet.
That's what I was
Okay,
asking.
tneed you.
Well, we need a second
Yeah, if we need a second.
somewhere.
Okay, so,
Hate to
Let's have a
interrupt,
second.
we have
I'll
to.
second it to
Thank you,
continue
Dr.
this
Okay, for
discussion,
discussion.
because I really want to, and sorry for interrupting here, but I want to do what's right for the board and supports our superintendent and supports the board. That makes sense.
do we have to pick the president and treasurer as well? Now you're saying that is that is a separate, well, I know we're not gonna do it today because it's not on the agenda. What I'm saying is, who picks that? Is that
Okay.
PFC?
That,
or is
that's
that us?
really not germane, so we're going off in a rabbit hole. We need to stay in what we're discussing, and she's already stated that the positions, the officer positions, are not on the agenda, so we can't do that at
Well,
this
I'm
point.
only asking, we're gonna have to vote again. That's why I'm asking, because if we're gonna have to pick the officers at some point, the point is, why don't we just do it all at once? That's what I'm asking. That's why I'm asking that question.
Okay, we go back to the original question, which is the 72-hour notice and a meeting, and then we being subverted as a board of trustees to not be able to have any input at all. This way, at least we can have the folks that actually work here can be on the PFC meeting and not have to call somebody from way back when to come and do a meeting that we have an emergency for whatever 72-hour call is needed. So we're just going to fill the spots today.
Are codifying who's there.
I get that, but, so we're gonna fill the spots, but the board of trustees, not the PFC board, is the one who actually decides who's going to be the president of this particular group, who's going to be the treasurer. That's what I'm trying to make sure I'm clear on.
And I have a question with regard to the interpretation at this point, with regard to officers as well. So if we could just fill the positions and then allow us to look at and research who gets to pick the officers or not.
So at this point, we're trying to figure out who's on that board or not, but we may have to come back and vote again. Who's going to be president, treasurer,
Right.
secretary?
Right. Again, that's not really germane to the conversation or the agenda item, but yes, that is possible. It is a possibility, but it may not be a possibility also, because we could go through and realize that, oh, no, the PFC actually does elect its own officers.
That's something I would like to look a little bit more into.
Okay.
Okay, so I'd like did anybody second? You seconded.
I still have discussion. If we're doing discussion, or do I not get discussion? Am I a second?
You've been
board
given plenty of discussion time, but you may continue.
Okay. Well, so what I'm hearing is that we're just going to codify the people that are there. Huh. Well, if we're just going to keep the people that are there, why'd we call this emergency board meeting? Ain't nothing emergency about it, except somebody got upset that they didn't get their way, so they had to set up a board meeting and waste tax dollars. How many people's tax dollars were wasted on this? It probably cost a few $1,000s for this board meeting, this wasteful board meeting. How many people's tax dollars were wasted on this that we could have done something more productive? Thank you.
Are there any other discussion?
I called it, go ahead.
No, please don't. Please don't call for question. We have a motion and a second?
Yeah. For me, that's the biggest thing I would like to know is, like, if we're going to have to do this again and again, that's why I'm like, I don't know, if we're going to have to do it again anyway, that's my bigger question. And if we don't sound like we don't know the answer to that as of yet. Because if we're going to have to come on the next board meeting anyway, on the scheduled board meeting, and say we're going to have to now pick officers if it does fall on the board. If it falls on PFC and we help speed that along, that's fine. But if we're going to basically have to come right back and then put them select board members, it seems like we're going to do double duty in that regard.
I can add to that.
Okay.
I think it's definitely in the best interest of the PFC to get the holdover membership and solidify that with actual current membership. And I agree that Mr. Hooper, it was a surprise to me a week ago that he was actually still a voting member on the PFC. So whether this board or PFC determines who the president and treasurer is, I think that can be decided later, but bringing the membership current is a good idea, whether it happens now or the 27th.
So can you repeat the motion so we can all be clear now?
I'm moving that Richard Vela and Jesus Amesquar, I'll get it soon, hopefully he's not here. No. Okay. Amesquar, to their positions that they already hold or have held for the last couple of years, but weren't legally there. Okay, Richard was, okay.
That Mr. Villa was never approved by this board.
Yeah, okay. Without any discussion, all in favor of this motion, please raise your hand. Okay. All opposed?
Yes.
Abstention.
What was the count?
601. Got some business done, okay. Do we have any? Go ahead.
Can we now nominate other people to that board?
Yes,
I'd like to nominate Richard Cantu to one of the other two positions.
You got to specify which position.
I'm sorry, remind me which two positions are still available.
Mr. Evans's position is open, and Mr. Colbert's position is open.
Well, I would say to replace Mr. Evans.
do I have a second? Hearing none, motion. Second, thank you, okay. Let's try and move this along. We don't have to sit there and spend a lot of time. Okay, so we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor of Richard Cantu being placed on the PFC board, raise your hand.
I was wanting to discuss.
Well, okay. Please stay with us. Here, we're going to discuss it now, okay?
Yeah.
Can't seem to get this.
I just
Go
want
ahead.
to reiterate that by putting Mr. Cantu on the board, which I don't have any objection to, under the normal circumstances, that would prevent Mr. Flynn, the president of this board, from being on that board, which has always been the case as far back as I can remember.
Any further discussion about Richard Cantu being placed on the PFC
Yeah,
board?
I have one. Richard, do you want to be on this board? I'm all for you being on the board. I mean, but I don't want to vote for you if you're not.
I'd be
for-
glad to serve on the board, PFC board, yes.
Okay. I just wanted your commitment. I mean, you know,
Yeah, he gave that at the beginning of the board meeting.
yeah. Okay.
Okay. All in favor of Richard Cantu being placed on the PFC board, please raise your hand. All opposed? Abstentions? Four, two, one. Nominations.
I nominate Superintendent Colbert to I guess go from a holdover to a actual current member of the board. Or new term, sorry.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, I'd like to just interject here that we have, in the past, we've had 3 people that are on the payroll of HCDE on this board. And that is not a function of a board that should, we need uninterested parties. Having 2 members already that are paid by the HCDE on the PFC is fine, but if we have if we have 3, that creates in my view, a conflict of interest where you have half the board is already being paid and the other half is not. And I think that if we're going to have a board that is independent, we need to consider have a majority of uninterested people instead of basically half and half of people that have a vested interest in the outcomes of the PFC board. Yes.
My feeling's somewhat different. I see it the opposite. Certainly by having staff, administration be part of this board, they have a tremendous amount of skin in it. This is our livelihood. This is the thing that we take pride in. We have a vested interest in these projects professionally, hopefully personally. Without question, I mean, I can't even conceive the superintendent not being part of a committee that oversees the construction of new facilities, of any facilities project. I don't see how having administration on this committee is a conflict at all.
I would have no problem whatsoever having a superintendent as an ex officio member where they have all the rights to speak and meet, but as being a voting member, I believe that there's a conflict of interest there that we need to eliminate, and I think we can mitigate it by bringing it down to 2 paid individuals. Trustee Dick.
What I think is a conflict of interest is having this meeting and not letting the people speak. You got about 40 people here that want to have their voice heard, but we have a cowardly person that don't want to let them talk. I mean, why don't you let them talk? You too chicken?
Question for our attorney. Are we allowed to increase the number on the board?
Yes, sir. Regarding adding members to the PFC Board of Directors, the bylaws provide that the number of directors that constitute the initial board is fixed in the Articles of Incorporation, which is currently 6. To my knowledge, the Articles of Incorporation haven't not been revised. And the bylaws further provide that the number may be increased or decreased, but by statute, you can't have less than 3. From time to time, by amendment to the bylaws, and the bylaws provide that any increase in the number of directors have to be apportioned among the classes of directors to make each class as nearly equal in number as practicable. And there are currently 3 classes that are dictated in the bylaws currently. So that then begs the question, how do you amend the bylaws? And the bylaws may be altered or amended by the PFC board by the affirmative vote of a majority of the directors. So by the PFC board.
So that could be the solution to this, is we could go to a 7-member board and have myself and Mr. Flynn be part of the PFC as voting members.
A question to the attorney. We do have the authority to amend the bylaws of the PFC since we created it. This point of information.
That's not what the bylaws say.
We could actually we could disband it, so I would believe that we would have the authority to amend the bills.
The bylaws provide that to amend the bylaws themselves. It says Article 7 of the bylaws of the corporation may be altered, amended, or repealed, or new bylaws may be adopted at any meeting of the board of directors by the affirmative vote of majority of the directors, provided that notice of such action shall have been given in the notice or waiver of notice of such meeting.
I recognize that we give the PFC board their own ability to do that. But the Board of Trustees has the ability to supersede any decision that the PFC does. So we can
I'd
change.
respectfully disagree with you.
No, I don't think
Can
they do.
we get a?
I don't,
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I'm listening to the advice of the attorney.
Okay,
I mean,
and there you go.
So.
This is why.
You know,
And, the Articles
Our
of
attorney.
Incorporation, yes, can be amended by the sponsor's governing body by appropriate resolution if it's determined that the amendment to the Articles of Incorporation is advisable. And the Public Facilities Corporation statutes do give this board certain authorities and certain liberties governing over the PFC board,
Okay.
but not all.
Okay,
not
now
a blanket.
we're doing it again, and I'm sorry, Mr. Norris, that I'm not holding on to my own, keeping it germane. We have, you gave us a motion. We were discussing whether or not Superintendent Colbert should be on the PFC board or not.
And I think the discussion was germane, because I think if your concern is having more members of, well, having half and half, I don't see the issue. It may not be necessarily be part of this discussion, but before people vote for this, it seems like people, if you're okay with the idea that we may increase it to 7, and that way we can make sure the president's on the board, we can have, 4 board members, and then three members of the administration. That way we can be, we can have, it seems like that's the best of both worlds. So I do think it's part of the discussion. So I guess now we get back to the motion, which is Superintendent Colbert being, I don't know if that helped anybody feel any different though, but hopefully, getting back to the discussion at hand, Superintendent Colbert being a director of the board.
And again, I just want to emphasize that we can make him an ex officio member of the board. So he still has all the influence necessary to conduct the business of HCDE proper.
What would that help? I guess, I'm not sure how that would.
It doesn't allow him to be a voting member because I'm just talking about, we need uninterested parties, people that don't have a vested interest in the operations of the PFC in there. And that's why if you have 4 board members, then you've got 4 people that are going to listen to the 2 interested parties plus an ex officio superintendent, so they still have the same amount of influence.
I mean, there would still be 4 board members versus,
No,
4
not
board.
at this point, no. If we put Superintendent Colbert in, then you would have 3 paid members of that of the PFC.
And then it would
Okay.
be 4.
Then it would be 3. No, there's only, our attorney just told us we cannot change the bylaws.
But we can add, according to the bylaws, we can add.
The PFC can. So
PFC board can add a
right.
person.
She's saying we can't do that.
Okay, so the question becomes.
Oh, I'm with you. We should be able to, but
Okay.
our attorney says
Okay,
otherwise.
well then here's. Well then, yeah, then maybe we should do that then. How about we do that then? How about we make sure that Superintendent Colbert, who is the superintendent, who I believe should definitely be on this board, but the question becomes the next PFC meeting, vote to increase the number to make sure that we have our board, the board president, the board president on that board as well, and that way we'll have 4 board members, and then we'll have 3.
Right, and that would solve the problem that I'm concerned about.
Okay.
Yes.
I have no idea when the next PFC meeting is going to be, but I think that would, whenever it's going to be, I think that would probably be the way to solve it. But, and I don't know if we can do something in advance, if we can vote when it does open, that if the board so does vote to increase the number.
So I don't think Mr. Colbert has the authority to ensure how the PFC board will vote, but I think he can commit to putting it on the agenda item, an agenda item on the next PFC board meeting to consider amending the bylaws to add a member to the PFC board.
And just to be clear, I would be happy to be an ex officio member as well. I don't have a problem. I don't need to sit on the board. I'm going to be at those meetings anyway. I just, being a member is not. I'm more concerned about the appearance, that it looks like we've got interested parties. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems with the PFC right now, is that it appears that people are voting for themselves. They have a vested interest in, and not that it's occurring, but that's what it looks like. And that's the discussion I've heard from our constituents, that there's a problem there.
Well, yeah, I don't follow that one. I hadn't heard anything, and I'm not sure how that would work with the superintendent. I guess I don't know how that. I'm not following, I suppose, and I'm not sure how that would I think most people would think that the superintendent, who is the person who runs this department when we are off doing our ordinary lives, he definitely would have an interest, and so would the other two, the CFO and the head of facilities. So
Thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, Chair. I've never heard that concern before. I serve multiple roles on that board. First, I need to hold my own people accountable, and that has been demonstrated. There's a tremendous amount of skin in it on my part, but also their part, that we get things done right and ethically and transparently. And so I don't see the conflict of interest or the optics by having the board, the superintendent sit on the board, but not have any legitimate say over the transactions happening. We're talking millions of dollars. So certainly, I think the superintendent, without question, should be a member of this PFC and should be a voting member also.
because if you put him as a non-voting member and the CFO and the head of facilities as voting members, basically they're voting. They're able to vote and they're able to make decisions, and he's not. So basically, you put them in a position almost being like we are as board members when we make decisions that he has to follow, even though they're typically his.
The intent of the PFC is to be a separate entity.
No, I understand. No, I get that. So I mean, this is how things actually get run. But the point is, if the actual practicality of if you put him as a non-voting member, 2 of his subordinates are actually going to be able to vote for the decisions that he has to actually carry out, and that's going to be that doesn't seem to make sense from what I understand this is supposed to do.
And I don't know really who this is directed to. I hope our attorney here I know we can't tell them to do that. We can ask them to put it on an agenda item. Can we just make a recommendation that we think that it would be good to increase by another board member? And that way you do have 7 versus 6, and it help break ties anyway. I mean, I just think that would be a good solution, a good, if we could just make vote to make a recommendation.
It's not on the agenda.
I know it's
I
not.
don't, it's not on the agenda.
Okay.
So if you would like to put such an item on a future HCDE board agenda to make a
I would like to
recommendation.
put that on for next regular scheduled meeting.
To make a recommendation, that would be appropriate.
Done.
Let's vote on the motion, please.
Is there any additional discussion about Superintendent Colbert being a member of the PFC? All in favor of Superintendent Colbert being on the PFC, please raise your hand. All those opposed? Six to one.
Mr. President, I think we had some clarification here today, and it helped me to understand. Even after reading that, I was a little confused. Having the attorney here helped. And I kind of agree that there is no need to take any further actions at this point. And I personally don't want to go through the rest of the agenda. And
I second that.
And I would like to move for an adjournment.
Second.
There's a motion to adjourn and not debatable. And a second. All in favor of adjourning?
How about discussion?
Yeah, we need to discuss that.
If you want to discuss, then we're not going to adjourn. So that's,
It's not debatable, I don't think.
Is it? Is adjournment debatable?
You can't wipe out the rest of the agenda.
Well, can we, are we in our rights to just stop here, Ms. Attorney?
You are certainly within your right to make that motion, and I believe it was seconded, and it's.
But you still can have discussion.
no.
I-
A motion has been made and seconded, properly seconded, without any debate. All in favor of adjourning, please raise your hand. All opposed, raise your hand. We are adjourned at 5:07.